The Rothschilds are a name everyone knows, the famous family that financed wars in Europe, influenced politics, and left a lasting mark with their immense wealth. But in the East, another family applied a similar strategy and wielded comparable influence, yet few remember them. They were the Sassoons. Their story began with exile and rose to the pinnacle of the financial world. They amassed fortunes through products governments officially condemned, but the world eagerly demanded. Long before the concept of a global economy existed, the Sassoons were already running this vast system. The story of the Sassoons didn't start in sterile offices in London. It began in the early 19th century in Baghdad, part of the Ottoman Empire. David Sassoon, born in 1792, was the son of a family whose patriarch served as a vizier to the Ottoman governor. Generations had been involved in trade, controlling routes stretching from Basra to Iran. But the price of great wealth is high. In empires, if your pockets are full, eyes are always on you. In 1829, as pressures mounted, David, armed with his family, faith, and business acumen, left Baghdad. He found himself in Bombay, a humid, crowded city under British colonial rule. For a refugee, it could have been either a grave or a gateway to opportunity. For David, it was the latter. He immediately recognized the vital connection between Britain's factories and Asia's vast markets. David had no title, no land, but he possessed an invaluable advantage: experience. He knew supply chains by heart, even before there were books about them. He instantly understood what the English needed, what the Indians could produce, and what the Chinese would spend money on. His basic rule was simple. If the environment is chaotic, there is profit. If everyone else flees and you stay, you collect the table. He started small: cotton, thread, every business opportunity he found. But his difference was this. He built a network based on trust across cultures: Jewish, Indian, Arab. He employed them all. He discovered something stronger than contracts: the trust of relationships. In a colonial world where no one trusted anyone, he built a borderless network. Then came the infamous, controversial product: opium. The British East India Company had a monopoly over the trade. Opium was grown in India and shipped to China. The Chinese government had banned it, yet demand peaked. In the vast shadow economy of the 19th century, essentially smuggling, the Sassoons stepped onto the stage. David Sassoon didn't sell opium on the streets. He managed its finance, insurance, and logistics. In other words, he became the brain behind the trader, behind the empire. His company, David Sassoon and Company, became the backbone of Britain's trade with China. In the 1840s, their ships sailed under the British flag to Asia. Their warehouses were overflowing with goods. Some said he profited from the suffering of nations. Others said he simply operated the system. The result was the same. David Sassoon became one of Asia's richest men. By the 1850s, he wasn't content with mere trade. He built factories and ports. Thousands of people in Bombay depended on him for their livelihood. He used his wealth not just to accumulate, but to endure. Every penny he earned from opium was invested in industry, stone, and land. That was his strategy. During the American Civil War, when England's cotton supply was cut off, the Indian cotton held by the Sassoons became worth its weight in gold. They controlled the flow of silver coming from China. Global crises became opportunities for them. But no one wants to share such vast wealth. British rivals, Chinese merchants, everyone tried to block them. Yet David's army was his family. He sent his sons like envoys to Hong Kong, Shanghai, and London. Each opened a branch. Wherever the British flag went, the Sassoons followed, often financing the operations themselves. When David died in 1864, he left a fortune that spanned continents. His eldest son Elias shifted the business into banking when Chinese ports reopened after conflicts. Shanghai at the time was chaotic, but as long as money circulated, there was opportunity. The Sassoons extended credit, acquired land, and expanded their operations. By the 1880s, their nickname was cemented, the Rothschilds of the East. The strategy remained the same: turn mobility into power. Albert Abdullah Sassoon went to England. He was knighted by Queen Victoria and took his place at the center of London society. The refugee family from Baghdad had become English aristocrats. The empire always knew how to reward financiers who served it. Yet in the shadow of this glittering life, opium still remained. It was Sassoon ships that carried the source of addiction affecting Chinese society. Legally, everything was sanctioned under British law, but the consequences for China were devastating. The Sassoons hadn't created the system, but they ran it better than anyone. Moral outrage and enormous profit sat at the same table. They were the invisible hand of the empire. Their money was controversial, but it built railways, hospitals, and factories. The paradox was clear: immense intellect and strategy, yet equally profound moral blindness. By the turn of the century, they were no longer just traders. They were contractors and philanthropists. They shaped Shanghai's skyline and built India's luxury hotels. They seemed untouchable. Yet history is ungrateful. While the Rothschilds are remembered, the Sassoons, having remained in Asia, mostly linger in footnotes. They left not just wealth, but a business model, a borderless network. They proved that money needs no homeland, only a strong web of relationships and trust. From refugee to aristocrat, their journey graced the pages of the Times and financed museums, while the young generation in Shanghai constructed the Sassoon House, today's Peace Hotel. The Great Depression of 1929 shook everyone. The Sassoons quickly turned to real estate and industry. But the world was changing. The old empire model, based on family and loyalty, was losing to cumbersome bureaucracies and giant corporations. By the 1930s, opium was gone, and competing with textile giants became harder. Japanese occupation and rising nationalism shattered the world they had built. After World War II, their Asian holdings were nationalized, and their London companies were absorbed. Their power quietly faded. Today the Sassoons may seem like a historical anecdote, yet their legacy lives on. Modern giants, Amazon, Apple, BlackRock, 2 centuries later conquer markets, create loyalty through dependence, and profit from imbalance, just as the Sassoons did. They, too, market it as progress. The Sassoons rose because they could sense risk. They fell because they believed their system would last forever. Their story reminds us, no network, no fortune is permanent. When money becomes the only passport, history judges not your intellect, but the wreckage and consequences you leave behind. For one day the ledger will inevitably close,